the Montgomery bus boycott and the civil disobedience that it started and that King continued and became a season of it for a decade or even a little longer than a decade showed a new dimension of politics, of direct action, of not just stopping with petitions and pressing for Congress to act and protests, but actually sitting in this case it was walking and violating the laws of Montgomery in terms of bus segregation, and it involved the willingness to go to jail, of putting your life on the line. It added, I think, a crucial dimension to the game of politics, that if you don't have that direct action option, you can't do it all the time. 12 ounces of civil disobedience might kill. 1 ounce can cure. But we needed that ounce or 2 or 3 ounces of civil disobedience to be added to the struggle. We needed that tool, that new weapon, and King showed how to wield that weapon. It was a weapon that required an art of persuasion. I think that the art of nonviolent direct action to persuade and bring about change was used better by King and the civil rights movement than it was used by the anti-war movement in the late 60s. If you don't practice the art well, you don't persuade. You produce counter reaction. I don't mean that it was always done well by King or the civil rights movement, but it was an extraordinary achievement. The other thing that, as you look back and look at our problems today, has to be noted is that the goals of that civil rights movement, of the Montgomery bus boycott and the sit-in students and the Freedom Riders, were achieved. The problems we have now are enormous, and we're not doing so well by them in terms of race and poverty. But the ending of public segregation, the ending of the denial of the right to vote, the achieving of that revolution was successful. It happened. Within a year of the Freedom Riders riding, all segregation and interstate transportation was ended because the public power of the presidency and later the Congress responded. The right to vote by the end of the decade was achieved. There's no going back on either of those two achievements. And I think it's very important that democracy have successes, so that part of the need for our respecting the history of that aspect of the 60s is that there were great successes that we need to note, because we need to achieve some successes our own. We're not doing so well, but they did.
How did Kennedy respond to something like the Freedom Rides? Was his response to that indicative of who he was?
Well, Kennedy, the president, and Robert Kennedy, the attorney general, both as men of action and preferred to control the agenda, or to think that they could control the agenda. So when the Freedom Riders rode, and Kennedy's agenda was to go to the first meeting with Khrushchev and to deal with the Berlin Wall or whatever the crisis was in foreign affairs, he was very irritated. It was embarrassing the country as he was first going forth to Vienna. And he got on the phone to me and he said, get your friends off those buses. You know, they're embarrassing my trip abroad. This isn't the time. Get your friends off those buses. I said, well, first place, they wouldn't get off if I tried, and second, they wouldn't be my friends if I tried. And he hung up on me, and very soon thereafter, he was calling me in to say, now what more should I say to go beyond just asking for law and order, but to show that the Freedom Riders were actually riding for a purpose he believed in. And he, within a few days of that angry response, he was figuring out how to say something that would move the country toward achieving that desegregation. And rapidly he ordered the Justice Department to seek an Interstate Commerce Commission order that would end segregation in bus stations and in bus transportation. And within 1 year, it was ended. Now, the Freedom Riders ride would have been a historic thing even if nothing had happened. But it would have been a historic failure if nothing had happened. It took the response of Kennedy after his first irritation. It took his ability to perceive that something was very important happening and being said, to which he needed a new response than his first response.